Hi, the Mudbrooker here. Today I'm going to try my hand at baking in my wood-fired cook stove, but I'm going to do something a little more forgiving than bread or a souffle. I'm going to make a nice batch of chicken and wild rice in a Dutch oven. Before we get started though, I would like to thank my patrons on Patreon: Kay's Kist, Benedict Riggers, Joy Jones, Damian Bamer, Leo, Theodore Engelke, Valentin Tolman, Kiasby, John Wheeler, Sherry Lynn, CJ, and Sarah. And today, in your honor, I'm going to be drinking a little Red Bush. Here's to you guys. Your support is greatly appreciated. But anyway, I'll get the camera moved around so you can see what I'm up to, and we'll get on with this. First thing I'll have to do for this recipe is prepare my wild rice. Usually when you make rice, you use a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 parts water to 1 part rice, or liquid. In this case I'm using chicken broth. But with wild rice, I've found that you're better off to use a 2.5 or even 3-to-1 ratio. So I made 3 cups of broth. I set some aside because I'll need that later for deglazing my pan. But now I'm going to throw in my rice. I'm going to add 1 cup of wild rice. I'm going to add a handful of dehydrated mushrooms. And since these are dehydrated, they'll soak up a little bit of that extra moisture too. A little bit more. Yeah, you can never have too many mushrooms. And I'm going to throw in a good sized handful of slivered almonds. One other thing I would normally add to this later on is some browned sage pork sausage. Now I have browned sage pork sausage somewhere in my freezer, but I could not find it, or any other pork sausage for that matter. I'm sure next time I open it, it will fall out and break my toe, but for this, I don't have it. It's kind of optional anyway, but it is a lot better. And I would normally brown that up and add it once this was done cooking. But for now, what I will do is put this over on a cooler part of the stove, let it simmer slowly for the next hour or so until it's done, and then I'll be back with the chicken part of our show. My wild rice is simmering away over here on the far side of the stove, and in the meantime, while I'm waiting on that, I'm going to show you the Dutch oven I'm going to be using today. This is a Renfro-ware Dutch oven. They're made in Los Angeles by Renfro Foundry. They were in business from about 1940 up until the mid-80s. The outside of this is a little bit rough, but the inside is just beautifully machined. I mean, it's glassy smooth inside. And one of the distinguishing characteristics of them, apart from the name on the bottom of the Dutch oven, is the lid. It has this line pattern around it, which Wagner-ware also made some that had kind of a line pattern on them like that. But what really sets them apart are the little nubs on the inside for the drip drop action, so the condensation drips back into your food. They're in a star kind of asterisk pattern. It's a neat little Dutch oven, and we'll use this here in a little bit once my rice is ready to go and I'm ready to start the chicken. Alrighty, my wild rice is ready to go, and I've got a couple of nice chicken breasts here. These are whole chicken breasts, but you can use split chicken breasts or boneless, skinless, whatever you want. I have here a rub that I made up. That's equal parts of salt, pepper, paprika, some cayenne pepper, and a little bit of garlic powder. I'm going to rub this chicken down with this good. And you'll notice I got my Dutch oven heating up in the background there. We'll get that warmed up good. And then I'm going to brown these a little bit. Throw a little bit more on the plate there. Then I'm going to brown these up a little bit, and then we'll be on to our next step. Which is knocking everything off of the stove. Okay, I'll set them aside for a moment. Looks like my Dutch oven's heated up good. And we'll get some clarified butter in there. Oh, probably a couple tablespoons worth. Maybe just a touch more. That smoke you're seeing is coming from the outside of the oven, I think. Let that warm up a little bit until it's nice and shimmery, and then we'll throw the chicken on. I got stuff falling all over the place. Get over here, you. Alright, I think the oil is good to go. And I just want to brown these up. I don't want to cook them through. And this will just take a minute or two. Alright, the chicken's got a nice little bit of a sear on there. So I'll take them out, set them aside for a moment, and grab my rice. I forgot to mention before, and I mentioned the wrong time on this, wild rice takes longer than white rice does. This is about an hour and a half is what this took. And you can see there's still a little bit of liquid. There you can see. Now you can see there's still a little bit of liquid left inside there. And that's good because I want a little bit more liquid in my Dutch oven when we bake this. I'm going to take some of the broth I'd made for making the wild rice that I saved out. And use that to deglaze the bottom of my Dutch oven. I'm going to pour my wild rice in there. Put my... I'm going to give that a little stir, and that'll get all those spices that came off the chicken work through the rice. Put that in there. Set my chicken breasts on top. And grab my lid. Where's my lid? Way over there. And that's ready to go in the oven. Let me move the camera and we'll put her in there. The heat indicator on my oven is showing 350, but it's not really accurate. Sometimes it seems to kind of catch up to itself after a long time, but I have an oven thermometer in there and it's running about 375. But that is useful because I can see if my oven is heating up or cooling down quite a bit. So I'll put my oven full of rice and chicken in the oven, cools her up, and I'm going to bake that for about 45 minutes to an hour at roughly 350-375 degrees. One important thing to know about baking in a wood-fired cook stove oven is all your heat is coming from the firebox side of the stove, because that of course is where the fire is. So you're going to get a lot more radiant heat coming off of this side of the stove than anywhere else. So you have to turn whatever you have in your oven fairly frequently, probably about every 10-15 minutes or so. And this is cooling down a little bit, so I got to jerk my fire up and make a couple of adjustments. We'll be back later. Alrighty, it's been 45 minutes. And I'm pretty sure that my chicken is done. So we'll get them on out of there. Hopefully you can see that over there. Yeah. And oh, that looks good. Trying to see if you can see in the camera. It's kind of set up at a funny angle from where I'm standing. But what I'm going to do is double check my temperature on this chicken just to make sure it's cooked all the way through, but I think it is. Oh yeah, that's plenty done. You want chicken to be cooked to an internal temperature of at least 165 degrees, and that is what we got. So, I'm going to take a piece of chicken, move it aside, scoop out some of this nice wild rice. Get that on my plate. Grab a nice piece of chicken, set that right on top, and there you go. Chicken and wild rice made in my cook stove. You can do this in a regular oven, fine and dandy. You just follow the same recipe. It's a pretty simple recipe. It's just a matter of starting ahead of time, getting your rice ready. It takes about an hour and a half to cook wild rice. Drag that off where it's cooler. And one last thing here, we'll see if that chicken is juicy or dry. Oh yeah, that looks good. Well, I'll see you all later. I'm going to go eat my supper and enjoy the video.